Hello and welcome back to the Birdcage. I'm Jack Kenna, joined alongside Kolton Kennon, and today we will be pretty much recapping Kansas's last few games. It's been pretty hectic around here, so we haven't had time to get behind a microphone for the last few games, but we'll kind of discuss all of them. 2025 has been a very interesting year for the Kansas Jayhawks already. Pretty much to just say it blunt.
No, yeah, the biggest win in Big 12 history. Also compared with a loss in Allen Fieldhouse with not the best West Virginia team. Against not the best West Virginia team.
Yeah, it was a West Virginia team that was really hurt by an
Yeah,
injury bug that affected Tucker DeVries and then another one of West Virginia's top players. West Virginia came in and took care of business and beat the Jayhawks on the road. However, it looks like a script has flipped in 2025. The Kansas Jayhawks traveled to UCF, a place where they lost a season ago, and picked up the biggest win in Big 12 history, right? According to score,
yeah,
the Jayhawks won by 51 points and
yeah,
just a dominating game by Kansas.
yeah. And like the craziest thing about that was the game wasn't close at all. Like I know you
Oh,
watched it. The game wasn't close, like literally from the opening tip till the final buzzer.
yeah. It was one of those games where everything went right for Kansas, and they walked out of Central Florida with a dominating performance. And to their credit, that pretty much led them to yesterday. Yesterday, the Kansas Jayhawks hosted Arizona State in a game where it looked like it was going to be a little tough at the start of the game. Kansas went into halftime down six. That didn't last very long. What were your impressions? I know you were on the call. What were your impressions
Yeah.
about that first half in specific?
Well, Arizona State's actually not bad. I think they can compete in the Big 12. I mean, the first half was I don't even think Arizona State played perfect in the first half and they were still winning by six, though Kansas didn't play that good, obviously. But the
Mhm.
second half of Kansas yesterday was the best defense. No bias, the best defense I've seen in college basketball this year. I mean, they allowed Arizona State, it was either 12 or 13 points in the second half.
Yeah, 13 second half points was all Arizona State was able to come by. And honestly, one of, if not the best defensive performance in college basketball so far this year. And that was led by a man named Shakeel Moore, who Kansas fans will grow to love, but haven't seen a whole lot of time for Shakeel Moore so far this season. He was really the deciding factor yesterday on the defensive end of the floor.
Yeah, I think it was his second game starting in a row. Only two starts of the season he was hurt in the beginning of the year. But in the first half he didn't play that good on offense, but he's just one of those guys I feel like in the first half at least. He was playing well on defense, not anything spectacular. But then in the second half, whenever they started full court pressing, even when DeJuan Harris went out, which is Kansas' best perimeter defender, dude, Shaq Moore played insane defense. And it was his confidence was building on the defensive side, going right to the offensive side. And if you're Kansas, I feel like that's something that like you needed.
Yeah. It was an extremely impressive performance from Shaquille Moore, who finished the night with 8 points, two steals on the defensive end, and just all around hustle work. Other standouts of the game against Arizona State have to be Zeke Mayo, the Lawrence kid. He has been putting on a show recently in a Kansas jersey. UCF, he had 6 points, and Kansas won by 51.
Yeah,
In the
Zeke Mayo.
past few games, he's been unstoppable.
Yeah, I think every time Zeke Mayo takes a shot, I don't think any Kansas fan thinks he's gonna miss it. Like genuinely, I don't think any Kansas fan thinks he's gonna miss a shot.
Zeke Mayo is one of the most impressive players on this Kansas Jayhawks team. Hunter Dickinson finished with a double double, 15 and 12. DeJuan Harris with 9, 3 and 7, doing everything on the floor for Kansas. He even had three steals to go along with that.
Marlon Griffin played.
BJ Adams, 6 points. We'll talk about that later because there's something I just can't, I just don't understand. But we'll discuss that later. What were you gonna say before I interrupted you?
No, I interrupted you. I This Rylan Griffin played really good too, and I think Rylan
Yeah.
Griffin's starting to. I don't he could find his way back to the starting lineup, but he's like accepting the fact that even if he doesn't start, he knows that Kansas needs him to play good.
Yeah. It's a very impressive performance from Rylan Griffin, who is now stringing together a few of those where he's feeling more comfortable in the Kansas offense. We'll talk about another man. You love him. We'll talk about Store later. Our group chat was going off about Mr. AJ Store. You're a big fan of his, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't know why he's not playing. Like I understand. Listen, the he played I think 3 minutes yesterday, and it was rough. He got in and he committed a turnover immediately, and then he had two fouls. But I'm just saying, if Store gets rolling, Kansas' offense is literally unstoppable. If Store finds a way to get going, because I think I said this to you guys, and might be a hot take. I think he's the most talented offensive player on Kansas roster.
That's not really a hot take. I feel like a lot of people would agree that Store AJ Store has the potential to be a great Kansas scorer. He just
On the
hasn't
looks
clicked
of
yet.
it, I don't know if he'll be back though next year.
Yeah, I don't know either. We'll talk about that a little later. I need to get your opinion. UCF, when was that game? A few days ago?
Yeah,
Too long
January
ago.
4th, 5th.
Yeah, it was January 5th. I was downstairs in my basement watching the game. You were doing watching the game somewhere. I know Emmett was watching the game. Came on in our group chat when the starting lineup was announced. We saw Shakeel Moore starting, and we were all questioning what the hell.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, he hasn't played very many minutes this season. And you have guys like Rylan Griffin and AJ Store and Zeke Mayo and even Diggy Coit in what is pretty much a crowded backcourt. Because you know Dewan's going to be there. So you have all of those guys fighting for two spots. And really, when we saw Shakeel Moore, none of us really could understand the whole philosophy. But in the two games where Shakeel Moore started, the Kansas Jayhawks have won by 51 points. And what was it, 19 points yesterday? 18
Yeah,
points yesterday?
19 points yesterday.
So you're sitting there and they've won by 70 points in two games where Shaquille Moore's starting. Explain it to me, please.
Like he had a really good second half yesterday.
Mhm.
And I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I don't think they should change this. I don't think Coach Self is going to change the starting lineup, and unless there's an absolute reason to. But I'm not saying like don't discredit anything from UCF, but literally everything went Kansas' way. Like I think you could have started Zach Clements, and Kansas still would have won by
You,
51
you could
points.
have started. You could have started Kolton Kennon, and Kansas would have won by 40.
Uh, maybe 30.
Yeah, maybe
But
30.
yeah, dude, I mean, yeah, can like Hunter Dickinson, I think had 21 points in the first half of that game. If he plays like that, I don't think any Kansas fan can say anything bad about him again. I think he finished with 27, and then Florida
Yeah, he
made crazy.
dominated. He dominated UCF.
Yeah, and then
We have a
Florida just
jam-packed schedule because I have a lot of questions to ask you, a lot of hot takes to ask you, pretty much.
okay.
Coming across my feed today on Twitter was a video of Shaquille Moore in a Kansas jersey, and pretty much the first comment I saw was he needs to start the rest of the season. I'll get my opinions out right away. Shakeel Moore, what he's done so far has been impressive. He has been involved in two of Kansas's most important victories and a huge comeback performance against Arizona State. I think he can guard the ball at an extremely high level. However, when I hear things on Twitter calling him a better defender than Big 12 Defender of the Year, DeJuan Harris, I feel like there's a lot of Kansas fans who really don't know ball. Because DeJuan Harris is still our best perimeter defender. Let's not get it twisted. But having another guard who can defend like Shaquille Moore alongside him, I think boosts Kansas defense up miles.
Yeah, no doubt Shakeel Moore is a really good defender. And like I said, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But I'm kind of in the same boat with you. I don't know if he should start the rest of the season. I mean, because some games Kansas is going to need offense. And I mean, we saw Shakeel Moore create a couple of shots yesterday, but most of it was from the defensive end.
Hmm.
But I think Rylan Griffin can play that good of defense too. Like I genuinely think
I agree.
Rylan Griffin and he can play that good of defense too. And he's longer than Shaquille Moore. He's more athletic and he's a better scorer.
I think what we need to figure out is just kind of what's wrong with this Kansas team. I was thinking about a title for this podcast at halftime of the Arizona State game, and the only title I could think of was "What's Wrong with KU?" Where I was going to have you and Emmett come on here, and we were going to chit chat. Why is Kansas not meshing? They meshed in the second half.
Yeah.
They did. And
And
all I can think about is this Kansas team can guard the ball. They can. I think they're going to have a hard time winning basketball games at the end of the season if a Diggy Coit or a Shakeel Moore has to be our starting guard.
yeah,
I think
that's
we need a Griffin or a Store to step up.
yeah, I'm in like the exact same boat as you. It's kind of like in 2022. I know you're a Creighton fan, or you were a huge
That's kind
Creighton
of when I
fan.
started watching
Yeah,
KU. Give me a
you were a
little bit of
huge
it.
Creighton fan, and if Remy Martin started for Kansas, Kansas probably still wins the national championship. But you had a guy like that come off the bench, and you had a Jalen Wilson or Christian Brown go in the starting lineup, and then you had a scorer and a defender also on the bench, which I think Shaquille Moore or Rylan Griffin can do. But like you said, I don't know if they're going to be able to find enough offense for Kansas to reach their peak if they start those games.
It
Whereas
just,
Rylan Griffin yesterday, something, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but something
they're
I
good.
saw. We've seen a lot of Rylan Griffin threes or jump shots. Dude, he was driving to the rim yesterday. I think
Yeah.
he like realized that he's like 6'8" and can like drive on anyone.
Yeah. It was an impressive performance from Rylan Griffin. I'll admit he was one of the first players that I noticed who really stepped up yesterday against Arizona State. But what scares me is when we're talking about offense, shooting.
Yeah,
Another example of a KU team who kind of struggles shooting the ball. They shot 30% against Arizona State. What do you think they shot against UCF?
probably like 45, 50.
Okay. They shot 40% from three and they won by 51. In a
It's
night where
insane.
everything was going Kansas's way, they shot 41% from three, which is really good for a team stat number. You're going to take it. But it's an example of just if Kansas is not hitting nearly every single shot, this team has a little bit of an issue shooting the ball. 7 of 23 from behind the arc yesterday, 30%. It's not perfect.
Yeah, yeah,
You're not sitting there and you're not scared, right? You see it, or Arizona State gave you a little bit of a test in the first half, but you muscled up. You realize we're Kansas. We're going to win this game by 20, which they did. Credit to them. But you
yeah,
have KJ Adams starting, who can't shoot outside the paint. DeJuan Harris, who's been better this year, but still sometimes won't shoot the ball or look at the rim. You still have guys guarding DeJuan Harris going under screens. A Hunter
and
Dickinson, who hasn't had the most effective 3-point shooting season. So you're kind of sitting there and you're like, you need Zeke Mayo to knock down most of his threes, which he's done at a really high level so far. And you need another guy who can go in there and shoot the basketball. So we're on the same page in terms of scoring. You got to have it. And when it's not coming inside, where's it coming from?
no, yeah, you hit on it. I'm sure you're gonna ask the question about KJ Adams in the starting lineup, so I won't get too much into it or like your thoughts or mine. But like, it's just like it's so hard to understand. Hunter Dickinson was in the corner a couple times yesterday taking three-pointers because they have to put KJ Adams inside because
Yeah.
teams respect Hunter Dickinson more outside than KJ Adams, and Hunter Dickinson is 7'1".
Yeah. And that's just the truth.
Yeah.
If you put KJ in the corner, Hunter's getting doubled.
If you put KJ in the corner, they're literally gonna play on the block. Like,
Yeah. Like that's the truth.
yeah.
And we understand that. And so Bill Self's making a calculated adjustment. Hey, KJ, we're going to have to put you inside. Now, here comes the question. You touched on it. Does KJ Adams' offensive ability limit Kansas basketball?
Well, I think even the biggest KJ Adams fans would say yes. I know KU Twitter definitely says yes. And me personally, I also say yes. And yeah, he's Coach Self loves him, and every KU fan loves him, but I don't think he's a starter for a national championship contending team. And it's everyone wants to give him flowers whenever they win by 51 against UCF. But then there's games against West Virginia, who once again I don't even think will be a top five team in the Big 12
No, they won't.
that
They'll probably
knows
finish mid
yeah,
to bottom.
that knows how to guard. Kansas when KJ Adams is in. I don't think Arizona State really knew what like they obviously knew what they were doing. Arizona State didn't pick up on the fact that you don't have to guard KJ Adams at all. But then there's teams like Houston and if Iowa State is going to kill Kansas if they guard KJ Adams accordingly. If they double on Hunter Dickinson and KU's not making every single three, I don't see a way Kansas beats Iowa State in at Iowa State.
Okay. Now let me ask you the question because we've touched on it. Without looking it up, I want you to tell me what did KJ Adams average a season ago?
It was probably like 12 and 4.
Yeah, he averaged 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 13 points. 12.6, I'll round up. 13 points. What's KJ Adams averaging this year?
6, 7.
8.5.
Okay, okay.
8.5 points,
How
two
many rebounds?
assists, 4 rebounds. So you're starting a guy who averages 8.5 points, but in the big games, KJ Adams has kind of failed to produce offensively.
Yeah, and it's so hard to bash on anyone a D1 athlete who's averaging 8 points because that is really good.
It's impressive.
And it's more than Ryland Griffin and AJ Store. But in those big games, like you said, he doesn't really get that many points. He boosts those averages on teams that don't know how to guard him. Like I'm genuinely being serious about that.
Like Oakland, Furman, he had
Yes.
22 points.
If
Missouri, he had 11, but the team lost. Brown,
if
he
you
had 10.
I'm so dead serious. If you give Ryland Griffin, and I know AJ Store hasn't been that impressive, if you give Ryland Griffin or AJ Store the ball as much as you give KJ, and you had no limits on him, you were like, I'm not going to take you out if you do something stupid, they could go for 25 almost every night.
All right, I'm going to ask you questions, and we're going to see how well you do.
Okay.
KJ
Well,
Adams, over under 8.5 against Howard.
over,
Under 7. KJ Adams, over under 8.5 against UNC.
over.
Over, he had 14. Great game for KJ Adams. Over
Man,
under 8.5 against
I'm looking like
MSU.
I don't know ball. I look like I don't know ball now.
Well, I have the numbers in front of me. I need the numbers to
Uh,
do this off the top of my head. KJ Adams, over under 8.5 against Michigan State.
under.
Under. KJ Adams, over under 8.5 against Duke.
I think it was over because Dickinson got out, right?
Under 8. KJ Adams, over under 8.5 against Creighton.
Under.
Under. They didn't respect him. He had 4. I already
See,
asked you
I
Missouri. He had 11 against Missouri. KJ Adams, over under 8.5 against NC State.
over.
Under, he had 6. KJ Adams, over under.
How is he averaging 8.5 points? Like, where is he scoring?
KJ Adams, over under 8.5 against West Virginia.
Uh, I know everyone hated that game from him, but I feel like it's gonna be over for some reason.
Nope, it's under. He had 2.
Oh, okay, okay, I
Adams,
should have known that. Yeah,
over under 8.5 against UCF.
over.
Under 7. KJ Adams, over under 6 points. Or I just spoiled it. KJ Adams had 6 points against Arizona State. So in these big games,
I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, but my point is standing, I feel like. So that's
yeah,
good.
KJ Adams just has kind of failed to produce in the big games other than North Carolina, which was the second game of the year. For a guy that averaged 13 points per game a season ago, he's averaging 8.5. He's regressed. And
And like,
he hasn't picked up the slackage anywhere else. He's a hustle guy. He's a glue guy. I'm a KJ Adams guy. Let me put that on the record. I'm a KJ Adams guy. But Flory Badunga, when Flory and Hunter are in the lineup together, is that not Kansas's best front court?
oh, 100%. And I think there's other lineups that are better than KJ and Hunter too. But Flory and Hunter definitely the best front court for Kansas because then you can actually put Hunter outside and Flory inside. And yes, Flory's not taller than Hunter, but Flory is way longer and taller than KJ Adams.
Yeah. I'm not. I'm a KJ Adams guy. I'm a Bill Self guy. He
Oh
knows what
yeah,
he's doing.
yeah, I agree. I am a
Like
coach. I understand. Yeah.
Like we're like what
Yeah.
we're trying to say is we're not saying Self needs to do this. We're just really lost. And there's a reason why we're lost. It's we're not in the locker room with him. We don't know what Self wants to accomplish, what he wants to do. But like you said, that puts Hunter on the perimeter and KJ inside.
And I don't trust Hunter Dickinson to make two or three pointers a game. Like because he once he makes one in a game, he's done to shoot at least two more.
Well, surely I would too. I don't want to sit here
Oh
and
yeah,
throw shade.
we
I
both think
definitely would as well. But what do you think Hunter Dickinson shoots from three this year?
this year.
Yeah.
I'd probably say like high 20s, low 30s.
Yeah, 27 and a half. That's not good.
No, that's not, yeah.
That's not good. And so if we have to put Hunter Dickinson on the perimeter, I mean, he did it against Creighton. Ryan Kolkbrenner pretty much perfected how to guard Hunter Dickinson that game. Let him shoot.
Yeah, exactly.
Make make him hit three of them because he's shown this year that he's really not even going to try to do that.
And it's whenever Hunter Dickinson has someone on the other side that's starting him that's either the same height as him or more athletic, it's bad for him defensively too.
Yeah. Defensively, there was a few different times where Hunter Dickinson hurt Kansas in the first half. Excuse me, I don't really know his number. I'm going to look right now. Bashir Jihad,
Yeah.
starter for Arizona State. You know how to say his name better than I do. If
Yeah.
you remember how to say it, feel free.
Bashir Jihad. It's Jihad. Weird.
Jihad.
Pretty
He
weird.
started for Arizona State, and I don't know if he can shoot or not. Yesterday, he was incapable of knocking down a jump shot. And there was a play in
Yeah.
the first half where Hunter Dickinson bit on a 3-point shot from this man, whose form does not look very pretty, who
Yeah.
did not have a very effective offensive game, which opened up Jaden Quintons.
Yeah. Quaintance.
Quaintons. He had a terrific game.
Yeah, he
I know
played
he didn't
really well.
score as much as Hunter Dickinson, but he had 10 rebounds in the first half.
Yeah.
Like, Quintons had a terrific game and was really dominating Kansas in the first half. So it's one of those games where you're like, I get it, Hunter. You have all of this offensive ability, but defensively, that's just one of, I could probably pick out a few more if I looked at it. But it wasn't his best effort, and he'll tell you that. He got burned a few times. But it's like
And
he's such an important player for this Kansas team. He really dictates how this Kansas team can defend the ball.
yeah, and I think if you're Kansas, you're just gonna have to accept the fact that he's probably gonna get blown by a couple of times just because he's not the most athletic player on the court. No shade. Obviously, he's 7'1", averages a double double, but I think if you're Kansas, you just have to accept the fact there's gonna be a couple times where he's gonna get blown by.
Yeah. Kansas Twitter loved the addition of Shakeel Moore after the two games. Before the two games, it was what in the world?
Yeah.
I think Bill Self made a calculated decision. Let's prioritize defense a little bit and offense will come along. Rylan Griffin looks like he's finding his footing right now. AJ Storr is still unheard of.
Yeah.
You're a store guy. I want you to try to explain this to me.
I
Because if Kansas wants to have Final Four national championship expectations and hopes, they need AJ Storr to figure it out.
I think the last time Store played a handful of minutes, like closing minutes, was against Missouri. They ended up losing that game. Store's defense wasn't bad at all against Missouri. He just couldn't make a shot. But
Mm,
I think I don't know. I mean, I don't think his attitude's bad. I mean, he's still on the bench clapping and cheering for his team. You see his like stories and everything. He's reposting the wins. Obviously, we're not at practices or anything. But it has to be, I mean, it has to be hard for him to go into practice every day, I feel like, or even go to the games when you were ranked at the time the number one transfer in the class, in the transfer portal, and then you go to Kansas, who prominent program, and you're playing 3 minutes a game. I don't know if he's scared to make a mistake because he knows Coach Self will pull him if he makes a mistake. And unfortunately, I think that's what it is.
yeah.
But if you're AJ Store, you just gotta like I feel like you have to realize you're able you have the one of the most you're one of the most talented kids or players on the court at all times, but he just doesn't have the green light like he does at Wisconsin, so I feel like he's a little timid. And yeah, he's really good at defense. I just don't think he's better at defense than Rylan Griffin or Shaq Moore or DeJuan Harris or any of those guys.
Yeah, that's fair. What I've seen from AJ Storr so far this year is a player who's just struggled getting it.
Yeah.
He averaged 17 points per game the year before this at Wisconsin. He averaged 9 points per game the year before that, his freshman year at St. John's. He's averaging 7. This is the lowest points per game AJ Storr has had in his career. He's only started 4 games. The majority of those have come in the beginning of the year. He hasn't reached 100 points yet. He's at 98. He's close, but he hasn't got there yet. He's just struggled getting it going. And like you
That
said, I'm going to agree with you. He has the most talent out of anybody on the court. No matter who he plays, he has the most talent. Unless we square up against Duke or an Auburn,
yeah.
arguably you can make a question on Tennessee. AJ Storr is the most talented player out of all of those. But
Especially offensively.
yes, especially offensively. But it's really hard as an offensive product and an offensive player whose game and really who makes the most impact on the offensive end. It's hard to get it going when you're not playing very many minutes, and he's not playing very many minutes because Coach Self doesn't trust him. So
I know.
again, it's another thing that we can't see.
I
But
wish we could see it like in practice and everything because, dude, that has to hurt. Like, I don't know if like ego is the right word, but you were
ego
like
is the
that
right
guy.
word.
Yeah, you were that guy last year for a Power Four team who almost made the tournament in Wisconsin, and then
They did make the tournament. They were a
oh
5 seed
yeah,
in the tournament.
yeah,
They lost to
yeah,
Madison, James Madison.
yeah, yeah. Okay, James Madison was pretty good, but
They
you
were
were
pretty
like the
good.
guy on that team, and then you come to Kansas, and I'm sure Coach Self had the intentions of starting him the entire time, and it just hasn't worked out.
Well, everyone had the intention of starting him. In fact, if we remember, the idea was going to be it's Dewan and AJ in the backcourt with Rylan Griffin, with KJ and Hunter.
Yeah,
And Zeke Mayo's coming off the bench.
it
Zeke
seems
Mayo's
like
the
a
best
start for him.
player on Kansas right now.
Yeah, easily.
So, what's that make of the rest of them? Rylan Griffin's struggled getting it going. Looks like he's kind of finding his rhythm. Alabama fans, I saw on Twitter on my drive up to Lincoln today, Alabama fans were making fun of Rylan Griffin for regressing. He hasn't had the greatest start, but it's looking like he's kind of figuring it out. And
And
Storr on the other end just
yeah,
hasn't got it clicking yet.
yeah, and hopefully he does for Kansas's sake and his sake, just because it would be a shame if someone that good ends up never going back to the level he was. But I'm sure he will, even if it's not at the University of Kansas next year. But it is a shame. But I mean, I think they'll figure it out. And it's obviously hard for us to say just because we don't see everything, but it's hard.
University of Kansas takes on Cincinnati on Saturday. I don't want to go really into huge details here, but I was extremely impressed with the performance Kansas has put together the past 2 games. Now they have to travel to Cincinnati to take on a Big 12 team that was preseason ranked, who is 0-3 in the conference. They cannot win a game to save their life right now. Colton, what do you think about the game? It's on Friday at 1 p.m. What are you going to be doing? Where are you going to be watching it? Who's
Wait, is
winning
it tomorrow or tomorrow? Or is it Friday or Saturday?
Saturday? Did I say Friday?
Yeah, I was just wondering. I was like, what? No, but yeah, yeah, like you said, Cincinnati was like 23rd, I think, to start the year. I think they went up at one point, but they're last place in the Big 12. They're 0-3. I think Kansas should be fine. I don't think Cincinnati has any confidence in themselves right now, and
Mm-mm.
Kansas has loads of confidence coming off those 2 huge wins. So I think Cincinnati is going to struggle again, and I think Kansas will win pretty easily. I'd say about like 7 to 10 points.
Yeah, I would agree. I really feel like this is a game where Kansas is going to show that they're Kansas.
Yeah.
They're stringing together a few good games in a row, and I feel like that's going to continue. I like the Kansas Jayhawks winning the game on Saturday. If I had to give a score prediction, I would say, well, I don't know. What do you think? I was maybe going to go 78-66. Jayhawks win by 12 on the road.
I like that one. I got 81-69.
81-69. Those are our score predictions for Cincinnati. That is pretty much all we have today covering Kansas basketball. I appreciate you taking the time to come talk to me. And now we have some college football playoffs to watch.
Yeah, good luck with your team
Yeah.
Notre Dame, Jack. Good luck.
The Irish, I think they'll be okay. Hopefully.
They got to be Penn State.
If not, you'll our group chat will be going off a little later. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about some Kansas hoops. The rest of you guys, I will see you guys later. Peace.